So halfway point in the season, and fair to say there's quite a few managers and teams under pressure, isn't there, guys? So which teams, which managers do you think are the most under pressure? There's a few you could name, isn't there? Graham Potter, Jurgen Klopp, Brendan Rodgers, of course. Myles, who stands out for you as the most in danger at the moment of losing their job or walking?
Okay, I'm going to cheat with this question because there's a big game coming very, very soon. Everton have got West Ham. If they draw that game, managers getting a sack. I mean, they already find themselves in the bottom three, both sides, along with Southampton, but that's Southampton. We kind of expect that at the moment. And neither of which really show any promise for lifting their teams from the position they're in. Maybe a cheeky little job swap so they can all return to their former clubs might sort it out. But no, I think despite the goodwill that Moyes has at West Ham for the successful last couple of years that he's had, and of course they're still in the Conference League, that will help him slightly. West Ham's squad is far better than the position they're in. They've got some world-class talent in that squad, Declan Rice being one of them, who they're really at risk of losing, particularly in this scrap at the moment. And that they'll get for a player like that if they get relegated it's unthinkable how much West Ham would lose out on if they went down. I don't think they will. I think they've probably got enough in the tank to get them out of that. But I think that might have to take a managerial change. So Moyes is really high on the list for me. But we know how bad Everton have been too. I thought Lampard would be the first manager out the door this season. He seems to have been out of a job a million times this season and somehow clung on. I've never seen... You always hear of managers being on the cusp of being fired and then getting one vital win that keeps them in the job. Lampard's mastered the art of not even winning that game, but just playing slightly okay and still losing, but that being enough to go, oh, maybe you can turn it around because we looked half decent against Man City, even though we didn't win. It's a weird one. He doesn't have the quality to manage at this level, clearly. So one of those two has got to go next, surely.
You see, I'm really worried about Graham Potter. I really am, because Chelsea is such a strange case this season, aren't they? And we'll talk about them now, actually. They've had an indifferent few weeks and few months, haven't they? And they've just spent another absolute fortune in this transfer window so far, most recently on Mudryk, which took us all by surprise. Are they just trying to spend their way out of trouble? It's a bit of a scattergun approach, isn't it? I don't know how much influence Potter's actually having on these signings as well, because he was asked in a press conference and he was like, well, this is not my remit, I just choose the players and choose the team, but he looks like a great player. And yeah, I think I worry for him and where they see him leading this team. And there's already been talk about Raheem Sterling being put on the transfer market as well and things like that. Aubameyang looks like he's going back to Barcelona potentially. So Chelsea for me look like the one where they could just lose Potter. Either, well, he's not going to walk, but I think they could cut their losses on him potentially. How about you, Dave? What do you think?
I agree, actually. I think both the two managers that you mentioned are probably most likely to get sacked first. And I'll give my reason for that. I think a lot of people have mentioned Brendan Rodgers still. But the only reason I think he's probably going to last until the end of the season is because I think he's probably got an agreement with the board that this is going to be his last season. He's probably feels as though he's taken the team as far as he can. I don't think Leicester will get relegated. I still feel as though they not necessarily too good, but there's players in there have the ability to still kind of get results. They've still obviously got Maddison to come back as well. And you mentioned there, David Moyes, he's invested in the squad, obviously in the summer. Some of the players actually that he's brought in, really good players, and they've just actually been a shadow of themselves this season. They've just not looked good enough, no consistency. So I see there being a really good case for him going. And you mentioned Graham Potter. The way Chelsea have been managed and run since the new takeover has been absolutely ridiculous. From their transfer policy to, I just feel as though he is such a good coach in what he's done. Obviously, you only have to look at Brighton, how well obviously they've done, and how well they've continued to do under De Zerbi as well. But I just feel like it was a move for him too soon. The amount of players that they have, especially with egos in that squad, the big name players, I just feel as though it's probably a little bit too soon for him to come in and turn that around, especially with how bad Chelsea have been at times this season. It's a lot to ask. So I just think it could fall on Potter, and unfairly, I would feel really sorry for him if it does. So
I feel like I'm the only person watching football right now that thinks that Potter's going to have at least this season. It seems a foregone conclusion that he's going to get sacked, but I know, obviously, Chelsea sacked Tuchel not long after a transfer window, but spending 100 million on Mudryk, bringing in Badashili and Felix, and then getting rid of your manager seems bizarre. Why you'd invest that level of
Yeah.
money in playing staff to then remove your manager, that doesn't make any sense to me. Along with that, their whole infrastructure revolves around Potter. If you look at the amount of people they brought over from Brighton that Potter has worked with previously, they clearly want this to be a project. Now, this season might be a write-off for them, which is awful for a club like Chelsea, but at least that gives you a building block. Look how successful teams have been previously when they've not played a season in Europe. It would be a big hit, but I wonder actually if in the long run, if you look at some of the young players Chelsea have invested in over the last couple of years, and they've invested in a young coach who will need time to build, I don't know why you'd hire Potter in the first place if you're not going to give him time. And I do think that is the strategy. I don't think they'll get rid of Potter. I think he's safe for a little while, unless they were in fear of relegation, which they definitely won't be, or if they got embarrassed in the Champions League, which I can't see that happening either. He'll be fine. He'll be absolutely fine.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know how low they would have to go for Chelsea to actually go enough is enough. And I feel the same with Liverpool, because you've mentioned in the past you think Jurgen Klopp's kind of unsackable. But, I mean, the way they're sliding and their 3-0 defeat to Brighton was the worst performance I think I've seen from them under Klopp's tenure, really. They just capitulated, didn't they? And all the things we've pointed out in the past kind of were enhanced even more. The poor midfield, the lack of legs, the lack of youth and energy, Trent Alexander-Arnold not being able to track back at all. I mean, Brighton were brilliant, weren't they, Dave? But Liverpool, are they in trouble for you? I mean, how low will they slide this season?
They've neglected areas of the team that they've needed to improve for the last couple of years. One of them we've mentioned over and over again is the midfield, which just looks completely devoid of energy and running. Some two key things, obviously, that have really driven Klopp's, obviously, ideology and his ideas that he's shown at Liverpool over the last few years. And obviously we mentioned it in the recent pod, in the previous pod, about he's continuing to try and play the same way with pieces, tools and equipment that aren't suited for the job that he is trying to complete.
Well, you mentioned that, did we, Dave? By name?
Not by name, but I didn't mention it.
A big hint, wasn't it?
You know, that must be so frustrating for Liverpool fans. They know that these players that they've got in, obviously, you know, James Milner, Henderson, Fabinho's not looking the same player either. They were a complete shadow of what they were, and it showed in this game. That just, I think Brighton had 63% possession as well, which is unheard of against a Liverpool team. That's really surprising for me. But we're probably doing. I don't want to do a disservice to Brighton. They were absolutely unbelievable in this game. You know,
their goals were so good.
They're really good, really good. Danny Welbeck,
March's
channeling
gas
gas
was amazing, and that guy, that was incredible. That was lovely.
There's a bit of an icing on the cake actually for United fans to watch Welbeck finish it off in that way. But how low do you think Liverpool will go, Myles, this season? And is Klopp ever in danger of getting kicked out?
I don't think he's going to get sacked. I've said that before. I wouldn't be surprised if he walked. If they exit the Champions League in the next round, which again, I don't expect them to, but if they did, he'd have to consider it, wouldn't he, whether he is the right man, because it's going to take a rebuild. This happens. Teams move in cycles. Football moves in cycles where tactics become different and you have to adjust. Liverpool obviously lost Mane. Their midfield needed reshaping. And it takes time to do that. It really, really does, particularly to do that and keep at the top level. Now, Liverpool tried to change from a position of strength and invested in players like Diogo Jota to refresh their forward line before it needed refreshing, having that backup ready to come in. His injury record stopped that. Their midfield, there are players like Naby Keita who you thought he'd probably come in and take Wijnaldum's role at some point. That didn't work out. A team like City has been able to do that under Guardiola and reinvest at the right times and bring in someone like Cancelo, for example, when City were already winning. Liverpool have struggled to do that so far. Now, they've spent big on Darwin Núñez, Cody Gakpo. They've got a lot of players in the attacking areas, but they're still yet to address that midfield. And until Klopp does that, he seems to be getting really angry in press conferences. Like, do you think I don't know any midfielders? I want a midfielder. Okay. Go and get one. Don't spend 40 million on Cody Gakpo and go and buy a midfielder. I
don't
think
know
it's
whether
weird.
I don't know whether they've had some sort of reassurance from players that will join in the summer, like not now.
You
Obviously,
just think Bellingham's
there was a lot of
coming?
talk. There was a lot of talk of Bellingham, wasn't there, for a while? But can you imagine him joining Liverpool with how they're playing at the minute and thinking,
not if they're not in the Champions League.
If they don't get into Europe, yeah. All of a sudden, I hate to bring it back to my club, but we started the season with a handicap, otherwise known as Steven Gerrard, and we're 3 points behind Liverpool and Chelsea now.
Yeah, that's mad.
How has that happened? That tells you how bad Liverpool have been, I'll be totally honest. It's ridiculous. I wouldn't be surprised to see Klopp leave at the end of the season. I don't think he'll be sacked. I wouldn't be surprised if he went, okay, I kind of fancy a new opportunity now. Let me start this project again somewhere else that's going to give me what I want. I think that could happen.
Yeah. Anyway, we wrap it up there. It's a lot of still question marks about which manager's going to go next. I don't think any of them will all be safe. I don't think that'll be the case. Someone's got to go, haven't they? The pressure will be too great for some. Whoever you think that is, please leave your comments below. If you're watching on YouTube, that'd be amazing. But that's it for today's pod. Thank you, guys. And if you want to watch our take on the top 6 so far this week and how they've got on playing against each other, there's a link to that podcast up there. But until then, see you soon.